Hey class, welcome to Abroad Sex Education, the sex education you deserve that actually makes sense. I'm your host, sex educator, and your coach for questionable Bible interpretations, Sin. And joining me a little later for our mini lesson will be Brooklyn. Today's mini lesson is, how did birth control become a moral issue? Before we dive in, I have a few updates. Abroad Sex Ed is going to be going through a bit of a format refresh. In a few weeks, I'll be going back to school for my master's in sexual health, which is very, very exciting and also a little intimidating because I have not been back to school in quite a bit of time. So, because of that, I'm going to be updating the format of the podcast a little bit. We're still going to have lessons with one overarching topic, but each episode will be broken up into subject. That way, they'll be a little bit more bite-sized for you and a little bit easier for me to edit while I'm going to school. Before we get into this mini lesson, I wanted to just give a different but brief consent notice. Today we're going to be talking about a biblical story involving sex, death, widowhood, pregnancy, inheritance, religious morality, and the way that this story has been used to shame masturbation, withdrawal, and birth control. As always, please take care while listening. I'm going to play a conversation that I recorded with Brooklyn where I told her a biblical story that has been used to condemn birth control, withdrawal, and masturbation. This is the story of Onan in Genesis 38. But like a lot of religious stories that get used in arguments about sex, the part that people quote is not the full story. So, let's get into it. We have to start with the story that made masturbation, birth control, and withdrawal a moral issue.
There's a specific story?
Yeah, the story of Onan. Do you know this from the Bible?
No.
So this is
I only know the one about the Immaculate Conception.
Oh.
She was a virgin.
I think this is the Old Testament. This is the Old
Judah's
Testament.
in the Old Testament.
Yeah. So Judah was one of the 12 sons of Jacob, and this is the lineage that Jesus was traced back to. Judah had 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. Married this woman named Tamar, but he was a dick. He was like an asshole. So God said, fuck you, and killed him.
Oh,
yeah.
Does that?
Yeah.
I have some names.
He was quote unquote wicked. And so God was like, nah, fuck that. Kill him. But in ancient Hebrew law, the practice of levirate marriage meant that if a man died, his brother was supposed to marry the widow and provide an heir.
What?
However, but the heir would be legally considered his brother's, not his own.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Who is paying for it? Who's child support on it? His brother, his dead brother? Maybe he's getting like a state benefit.
All the inheritance would go to that child.
Oh, okay.
But then it wouldn't be his own child. It would be technically his brother's child.
That's so weird. Okay.
Yeah. And so Onan was the second oldest brother, and he was like, fuck that. I want to keep my inheritance to myself. He had to marry her, and when he would sleep with Tamar, he would practice, quote unquote, coitus interruptus, which is essentially the withdrawal method.
I am never calling it withdrawal again. Coitus interruptus is my new favorite vocabulary of all time.
Yeah.
That's great.
So he would use that method, and then God was pissed. God was like, what are you doing?
I love that God cares so much. He's like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I want this woman to have a child.
Some people interpret this story in the Bible to like God was condemning birth control, but God was really just pissed because he thought that Onan was being deceptive and probably greedy because he wanted to like keep his inheritance.
I mean, that's why I don't want to have kids.
So he was spilling his seed. This is the moral argument to why some religious people use against masturbation and against
What
birth control.
are they comparing this to masturbation?
Yeah, because it was him
Spilling his seed without impregnating.
Yeah.
So wait, Onan is the son of Judah?
He's the second son of Judah. Then God killed Onan because he was being greedy, and so God was like, kill him.
And he just started killing.
Tamar was then supposed to marry the youngest son, whose name was Shelah.
Okay.
But Judah was like, this woman is cursed. Like, all my sons keep dying because they keep like sleeping with her.
They thought it was her.
They thought she was the problem, right?
Of course.
But she was like, I need to secure my place in the inheritance. So
This poor woman.
So she dressed up like a prostitute and she slept with Judah, the dad.
Okay. Oh, but in disguise.
In disguise.
Okay.
She slept with him in disguise and stole his staff and his seal as proof. When she came back and she was pregnant, he was like, oh, she's a whore. But then she's like, no, I have the staff and the seal of the person whose child it is.
Oh.
And then he was like,
reveal.
yeah, he's like, show it. And then she showed it. And it was
This is
her.
some biblical telenovela.
Yeah.
I love it.
And she showed him his own staff. And he was like, oh my God, you were the whore that I slept with.
And also, like, you never looked her in the fucking eye before that you were like, I didn't even know it was you.
She was just like, you can't punish me. This is your baby and I have your shit to prove it.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious.
That's great.
So then he declared her more righteous because she was able to secure her family.
Oh, how about that? Yeah. How the turntables.
But yeah, this is a story that people use to make masturbation and or birth control a moral sin.
So you literally have to dress up like someone else.
They never finished the story. Yeah, they're just like, he spilled his seed and then God was not okay. I was like, finish the rest of the story. She slept with his dad.
I feel like that is like a big climax to the point. And they're just like, yeah, so forget that. And I'm like, no, that's a big deal.
They're making the exposition of the story.
They're focusing on Act 1, but Act 2 is where it's at.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was a really funny story. I love it when like I learn of something biblical and then I find out the actual full story of it.
Yeah.
Like, you guys didn't even finish reading the book.
Yeah. That's why it's like, it's so selective, right? And then it's also like, but that part contradicts that part. But yeah, and then of course back then only some people could read. So it was like, okay, well, I guess that's the end of the story.
They're like, we're just going to finish the book here.
Yeah.
And it's the end.
And I'm going to go to bed because I'm tired. We're not going to finish this.
So that was the story. And as you can hear, Brooklyn and I were fully invested in the biblical drama of it all. But now I want to zoom out because the story is doing a lot more than just giving us an old example of the pull-out method. Let's unpack why this story became important and why reducing it to God was mad that he pulled out misses so much more than what's happening. The story of Onan is often remembered as a story about masturbation, withdrawal, or birth control being sinful. When you really look at the context, the issue was not even Onan spilling his seed. The issue was because he was supposed to fulfill a family obligation. Under levirate marriage custom, if a man died without his heir, his brother was supposed to get married to the widow and have a child so that the dead brother's family line could continue. That child would then be considered part of Er's family line and not Onan. So Onan has sex with Tamar and intentionally avoids giving her a child. God was mad that he was being deceitful and greedy for wanting that inheritance all to himself. So he got access to her body while denying her the security, status, and the future that child would have given her in society. But that's why this story matters for birth control history. It shows that preventing pregnancy was never just a biological act. It was tied to family, property, inheritance, religion, gender, and power. So when people use this story as a simple argument against masturbation, withdrawal, or birth control, they're just flattening the story. They're focusing on spilling the seed, but ignoring Tamar completely, which, given the history of religion, makes sense why they would completely ignore the woman who's the most important part of the story. They're focusing on the act, but ignoring the system around it. And this is going to be the big themes of the birth control unit. Birth control isn't just about the methods, it's about the meaning. Who gets to prevent pregnancy? Who's expected to reproduce? Who carries the consequences? And who gets judged for having control over their own future? So this mini lesson is our starting point. From here, we're going to build out the birth control unit in a few different ways. First, we're going to have health, but instead of just doing a basic list and definitions of birth control, we're actually going to do a quiz episode where it's you versus Asa. I'll ask questions and you'll be competing with Asa while he answers in real time so you can figure out who knows more about birth control. Then we're going to go deeper into the history of birth control, but it's going to be split into two different parts: before the pill and after the pill. And finally, we'll move on to sociology, where we're going to talk about the burden of birth control, who is expected to manage pregnancy prevention, who deals with the side effects, who's asked to be responsible, and why that responsibility still falls so unevenly. Because by the end of this unit, I don't want you to just know that birth control options exist. I want you to understand why birth control has been more than about preventing pregnancy. It's about power, trust, access, responsibility, and the right to decide what happens to your own body and your own future. That's it for today's mini lesson. Have any questions about human sexuality? You can submit them anonymously using the link in the show notes. And if this episode helped you understand something a little bit better, share it with a friend, because the best way to destigmatize sex is to talk about it. Follow the show to stay updated on future episodes. To go deeper, sign up for our newsletter to receive our free Essential Sex Conversations workbook. Thanks for joining us here at Abroad Sex Ed. See you in the next episode. Class dismissed.